conformist with the convention can be seen as a rebel. Now, from this end, looking at someone who is saying no to what you're doing, you can be termed to be a rebel. The question I am asking, I will key in gladly to an amnesty for Boko Haram if three things can be met. First, people need to show up and say, we are leaders of these people, we speak for them. I could call men to order. I could sit down as president of Nigeria and say, men must not bomb any pipeline in the next 2 weeks until such a time that the government fails. And they'll listen. At the time, I may not even know all the men leaders, but because there was a chain of command and there was a political wing, they will listen. Now, we need to find out that chain of command. Someone will say, in the next 30 days or 6 months, while this discussion is going to be on, we don't want to, no bomb should be detonated, no life should be lost. A criteria. 2, people need to show up and be on the discourse table with the government. And then I need to ask a fundamental question. After granting amnesty, how does the government intend to rehabilitate these people? With what funds? Where are the economic gains that will be put on the table from whose pool you can now take to rehabilitate these people? I'm asking this question because all Nigerians deserve to be serviced with the oil money. You don't need to do violence before oil money is taken to maintain you or train you.
And that's the third point.
Do you get that? Now, if you think that you can just make trouble and then access oil money for benefit, you send the wrong signal out. And everybody will take up arms in anticipation of the word amnesty.
So, in other words, if those 3 conditions are fulfilled, then amnesty is granted.
Now, if these 3 conditions are considered, and people show up and they tell Nigerians why they have done what they're doing and are willing to down their tools, then you can look for a window of granting amnesty. Now, the template must also not be married to the Niger Delta template. So, you need to be cautious about what you do.
How then, or where is the role of what the people or what Nigerians actually think about that action? Where does it come in here? Because
come again. What are you trying to say?
If the people say they're not sure that that's the way to go for the government, does the government factor that in also?
And that's why we're talking. The government needs to look at all sides of the interest. Government wants peace, so it can continue to run governance. So government is willing to hand down amnesty. And I'm saying that in any case, more importantly is that these people, are they Nigerians? It's a question we need to first of all answer. These people, are they real Nigerians? Do they have Nigerian passport? Can they be said to be Nigerians, or are they mercenaries? Are we going to grant amnesty to mercenaries in our country and spend our country resources to build their capacity? We must be very sure of some of the technicalities, and that's why Nigerians are wary.
How do we know if they're Nigerians?
Now,
you're
that's
talking
why.
About passport. Do we have a Nigerian passport?
No, that's why we need to. That's another.
It's only the man who travels that carries the passport.
That's another big issue.
So if you don't travel,
that's another big issue.
And you're in the
but
village,
we
you
need
don't have
to
a passport.
now have people who can say, "These are our people. These are their numbers. We can count how many we are, and we are willing to down tools. We can cease fire by the chain of command, and we are willing to conform."
That means you're talking about some youth leaders now in the
region
to come. Because
it can be elders, it can be youth leaders.
But the elders have tried. Some religious people have tried. You don't expect the vice president, Namadi Sambo, to do the same thing that the then vice president.
I won't even advise him to take
because it's a different scenario. You and I just agreed. So what do we do in a case where anyone who tries to actually
I told you,
come
deal
in
with it as a terrorist situation.
In what way?
You deal with it as a terrorist. Universally, there are ways to deal with terrorist issues. The US just took care of Al-Qaeda network. Deal with it. I'm very clear. If these people meant issues of development, the way they have gone about it is just justifiable. They bombed schools, they've bombed churches, they've killed women and children, they've attempted on innocent people. These innocent people themselves are victims of bad governance that we experienced over the years, themselves crying and clamoring for change. Now, if you say you're fighting for justice and you want peace to reign, what have these people put on the table for the reason of the violence? It's very key.
Thinking about this amnesty, by the way, I mean, is it even really working, even in the Niger Delta? Because we have people asking that, look, this was not the amnesty program that you originally visualized.
In every scenario, there will be a political undertone. In every scenario. Ordinarily, what we have preferred to the government is that, okay, we demanded that we need our places developed. We need to have a fair share of ownership right in the oil and gas sector. We cannot sit as owners of oil, and 83% of the oil wealth is on the land.
But is that happening?
No. Now, those issues are being addressed. You need to have a legal framework to fix that. You need, for instance, look at the Niger Delta Ministry. It is under budgeted for every year. It's deliberate. The budget goes to the National Assembly. A majority of people who are not from the Niger Delta slashes the budget down. So we cannot, and the intent of creating that ministry was a special ministry to rapidly develop the Niger Delta. Now, because there are no funds, they can't even finish East-West Road. And this president is an all-accommodating, a broad-minded Nigerian president who seems to be very cautious of not trying to be selective in his agenda. So his responsiveness is to a broad-based thinking and is aligned due process.
Isn't that why we must find ways? That's why we're asking you how this amnesty can work. Because remember then, he said no amnesty, meaning he now listened to the people and said, okay, well, you want it. Let's constitute a committee to look at it.
And I'm saying that they could have gone another route. They could have gone another route,
which is
a peace and conflict route, and allow amnesty to be kept under the carpet. And when these people have agreed to peace and other issues, then you can say, okay, you are being pardoned.
No, what if that's still on the cards? But because of the hue and cry about this amnesty, it now goes from maybe say third on the agenda. Okay, temporarily bring it to the first, and let's see how they react, and then bring up these other issues alongside.
My interest is that in granting amnesty to a people who can be best described as terrorizing our country, you need to be wary and cautious of the use of the word and the pattern with which it is going to go. I'm saying this because in doing the same for the Niger Delta, there were commitments made by the government in terms of reinvesting on these people. If you go globally and look at various amnesties granted, it's not in all scenarios that what you have happening in the Niger Delta is happening in certain amnesties. Certain persons are granted amnesties and are trained. Certain of them are reintegrated. Some of them are rehabilitated. This sect that we're talking about, in granting them amnesty, you need to look at the implications in terms of policies of forgiveness of crime in the country, in terms of crime, in terms of terrorism, in terms of economic benefit and a cost to the country.
Well, shouldn't you consider what they were actually about or what they're asking for while
they don't want schools? Amnesty? They don't want schools. This president builds 1,000 Almajiri schools, which is Islam in inclination. They're not in the schools. The schools are empty. So they don't want even the Islamic school.
How do you know that? Have you been to the schools?
The majority of the schools are empty. What have you heard about the school?
No, but I think the Almajiri school is working. The Almajiri school is
still
working.
Do you want to give me an example of one?
The one built by President Jonathan is working.
Could you please show me a few that are working?
No, we're not talking. We're talking about the one built by the president. This present government is working, and we have reports showing that it's working. So
why are people in the schools?
Now, have you been there? Who says nobody's in school? Which reports are you?
These schools they were built because it was to serve the interest of those who said, okay, we do not want a conventional Western education. Incidentally, the people who are attending these schools are the same people who are open to Western education. So the ultimate goal is defeated. The ultimate goal is, for instance, you are building a fisherman's school so that fishermen will go to school. And then you set up a fisherman's school. And those who are already in regular schools are the ones now enrolled in the fisherman's school because the fisherman has refused to go to the school. That is what you have in the Almajiri schools.
I mean, you talked about the fact that some of the issues alongside the amnesty for Niger Delta militants have not been addressed. You say they are working on them. But fundamentally, all of this talk about amnesty, these groups coming up here and there, does it even really address the fundamental problems that society is facing? Because remember, you have other groups out there who
I've said 1,000 times that amnesty is not the end of the road. It's just a means to an end. It's in the Niger Delta, the scenario is that you grant amnesty, you create an enabling environment where everybody has a sense of ownership, and then go ahead and focus on the core issues of resource control, resource ownership, infrastructural development, and political space. We want states created for our people. We want our environment improved compared to Netherlands, Scotland, and Texas. We want that. We want to be given scholarships. We want to work in the oil and gas sector. We want to own the oil blocks like you found in Dubai. These issues have not been met. Now, these are issues that need policy reframing, new laws and all that to actualize. And it takes courage, time, and energy to do that. Incidentally, you also need the National Assembly. Look at the PID bill. It's forever not going to be passed. They're struggling because they're playing politics with it. And my concern is you need to take politics out of certain things. like what we have now. We are trying to politicize amnesty and play politics with amnesty by granting amnesty to a people who ordinarily says they don't want it.
Is that your fear? Because a host of people will say that, again, it's the prerogative of the president. Why, especially since your people have benefited from it, why are you being so protective of it?
The annoying part. The annoying part is that people say the Niger Delta has benefited from it, so Mr. Goodluck Jonathan must reciprocate and give to the North. And I say no. If that is the condition, then there shouldn't be no amnesty for anybody. Because in the case of the Niger Delta, we had core issues. Issues of marginalization, issues of broad day robbery from the Niger Delta people by the government of the day.
Do you speak for the Niger Delta people?
I speak confidently on the issues of the Niger Delta, and what I say is the way we feel in the Niger Delta. That whereas we rose up against our own government, we did not ask that the country should break. We didn't say that we needed a Christian president. We didn't say that the president must be from Niger Delta. We didn't say that people cannot walk freely in the street. We said that if you must explore oil, it must be done with international conventional practices. We must be part of the process because the oil is on our land. Our environment must be respected. And if you fail to do that, you cannot take oil in our land. That was our argument. We said that because we are owners of our resources, we must go there and resources must be put back in our land. And we were very focused on that, regardless of whatever criminality that was done. We took hostages. I'll tell you why. The hostages that were taken were expatriates to put fear so that these expats must not come to continue to take our jobs. We blew up pipelines because we said the oil must not flow to the government coffers. And they were clear targets. Militants didn't go to town and shoot at innocent people. They didn't even go to town to shoot at government.
You know, most of people will say that the president can decide for himself. I mean, again,
the president cannot decide for himself. The president has to decide in the interest of all Nigerians, not for himself, not for convenience, not because he's being given pressure by a political group somewhere.
He is deciding, of course, for himself, by himself on behalf of Nigerians. That's what I'm trying to say. He definitely can tell the difference between the Niger Delta struggle and what exactly is happening in the North. And if he believes that mercy is what is needed there, don't you think it's his prerogative to grant it?
No, I like the word you have used. Mercy is the word that is needed there. Now, I have said here that
that's
the
how
government.
It's couched in the Constitution.
I have said here that the government can grant amnesty, but amnesty as it is being patronized in the media and by the people who are canvassing for it is to say that give these people pardon, give them money to train them, excuse them for all that I've done, and give them stipend like you're doing in Niger Delta. And I'm saying it shouldn't be compared.
Okay.
What should be done is dialogue.
By the way, what do you think about, since you like the word mercy, former governor of Bayelsa State, let me say.
Yeah, now that's another point in time that we need to be very cautious of. State pardon, amnesty, mercy, they all look like they're the same thing, but they have different connotations.
You think it was a good thing? What's your thinking?
Good,
commendable?
Yes.
Or
it is, of course, commendable.
Okay, all right.
And I have my reasons. You need to know I'll tell it to you.
Okay, well, I'm afraid
now, without being sentimental,
time won't let us go there. But we really would have loved to, but well, that's what time does.
Some others would have to think it differently, but I have my reason.
Okay, quickly, so that I just cleared your thoughts.
I said here that if these people can show up and admit to their crimes and are willing to change, it is acceptable. The governor of Bayelsa State, I haven't been through the process. I've shown a lot of sober reflection. I've participated in national processes. I've transformed more people than you could think of.
Okay, Dr.
And I've played a key role to move us forward, and therefore needs to be supported and encouraged and be pardoned.
All right, then Dr. Chris Ekiyo is the former president of Ijaw Youth Council. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.